Welcome back to the Welcome back to the CONVO couch, everyone. I am Pasta Jardula.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Jonny Sue is still on those ones and twos.
Poor Jonny Sue.
In the studio today, we have a great guest for our candidate month. We have a doctor. He ran as a Green last time. He's running as a Green this time. Rodolfo Barragan for Congress is in the house. How you doing, Rodolfo?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
It's awesome that you're here. We got to see you last week in that rally. We got to see you speak. You know, I was looking for candidates, and I only found two. You and Angelica Duenas. And I'm so honored and proud to have you guys here because we love the anti-war voices. But right off the bat, first question. You ran as a Green last time. You're running as a Green this time. Angelica switched. Why didn't you make the switch to Democrat this time?
Part of the reason why I'm running is that I really want to try to build a movement and facilitate any movement building in the area. And that movement building has to be able to survive any election. It has to be well educated about what's going on in our area, which is that actually the Democratic Party rules the area. We have one of the most Democratic, bluest areas of the country. And all of our problems are not due to the Republicans. They're due to the Democratic Party. And it's very important to me to be able to, regardless of what happens in this election or future elections that I may run in, the community needs to realize what's going on, which is that a tightly organized group of people, the top Democrats, use their party to stop progress. I decided to run independent of that party with a party that was more affiliated with certainly my taste and I think with many other people's tastes. Just, of course, it's a challenge to let people know about it.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important that we are always educating people about the nature of the Democratic Party. Unfortunately, of course, as everyone watching this knows, it's pretty corporate and it's very, very difficult to make change within that party.
I agree with you 100% on that. However, what do you say to people who say, well, the Green Party is a lost cause? The Green Party hasn't won very much, specifically in Los Angeles. How do you fight against that narrative that you're just, wasting a sort of a run?
Well, a huge component of it is that, for example, we can look back at a previous congressional candidate. His name was Kenneth Mejia. So he ran one time as a Democrat, then he ran twice as a Green. And I think one of the really interesting things that happened in that race and has been happening in my district, which is right next door, is that the Republican Party has been completely wiped out. So, for example, he beat out Republicans and Libertarians. So it's been, I think he established his race. The results showed that in central Los Angeles, that party, the Republican Party, and of course the Libertarian Party, are out. The people are not interested in those ideas at all anymore. Hence, he won the primary, and then he went on and did a quite respectable, I think it was almost 40%.
Yeah.
So that's quite something that even though around only, I think, 1% of people are registered Green, 40% of voters, almost 40% of voters, went for a Green, and he was pushing for great ideas, great policy priorities, and that's kind of what happened in my district as well. That we have even less Greens. In 2018, we have I think 0.5. 0.5%, and yet 30% of people voted for a Green. So that's just striking. And so to me, it's a task of continuously moving forward and making sure people know about how the Democratic Party has betrayed us. And the fact is that even if we choose another Democrat, they're highly likely to betray us as well.
Yeah, but what about the whole argument that it's more of like the Bernie Sanders argument? Because a lot of people are like, why haven't you just left the party by now? Well, the whole thought process is get in there, take over the party, hijack the party. Why have you stayed away from that tactic, rather stay from the Green Party? Because you and both Kenneth Mejia moved that way. Let's not also forget, in that particular district, he was once an endorsed Bernie Sanders candidate. So the fact that he was running a Green or independent, I think that was really what shined. It was like a populist movement with him. But why use the tactic that you guys have stayed with? Rather, when some people have gone the opposite way, go in there and hijack that party. If it is so bad, let's go in there and grab it and take power away.
An example, AOC.
So a huge part of this, I think you have to take a long view at history. So there are examples of people that have gone into the Democratic Party and have caused a conflict for the leadership of the party. So these days, of course, we have most notably AOC. Prior to AOC, we had people like Cynthia McKinney and Dennis Kucinich.
Yep.
And even in his day, Dean was a so-called radical progressive. But I think what that history shows us very clearly, is that unfortunately the very top of the party, which are people like Pelosi, people like Schumer, they have very, very tight reins on their party members, and they are essentially able to squash any kind of protest. So you mentioned AOC. I'm a fan of the policy priorities that AOC is pushing. But I'm not a fan of how she voted to make Nancy Pelosi the speaker.
Yep.
I'm not a fan of how she voted for some funding that was quote pro-democracy that was actually going to try to topple Latin American governments like Venezuela. I'm not a fan, and I think it's ridiculous. Recently, I saw that she said that she was saying that the Democratic Party is not a left party, that she can't even get a floor vote for Medicare for all. Well, of course, if you're voting for Nancy Pelosi for a speaker, how are you ever going to get a floor vote?
Yeah.
So
she was praised for that, by the way.
Yeah.
Majorly.
Right.
And I thought it was a good thing that she said that, but but in
Yeah.
retrospect, could she have not voted for Pelosi when that was the inevitable she was the inevitable winner anyway?
Stand the line, right? No.
Well, it's kind of like, we want to be protesting as much as we can when we feel like there's an injustice or there's something that's wrong. And the fact that I was happy when, say, Tulsi said, well, she voted present. She voted present on that. And that showed courage. That showed courage. That showed backbone.
Thank you.
AOC could have done the same for that vote for Pelosi. And she didn't. Voting yes to the leadership of Nancy Pelosi implies so much to people. So I think it sends actually a confusing message. I wish that she wouldn't do those things so that we could get the good things that she's pushing for, which there's a lot of them. But you need to actually stick up against the leaders. It's like, say Bernie has been criticized, right, for saying that Warren is his friend, Biden is his friend. No, they're not your friends. And you don't vote for them to be speaker, and you don't give them any level of credibility because they have none. They're not friends of working people, of the vast majority of people in this world. So we should not, make it okay to treat them in a better way or to give them more power.
But just to play devil's advocate, a lot of people are saying Bernie Sanders has to run a little bit different than he ran in 2016, where he was a little bit more radical, more independent. This time, his team is made up of people who are telling him to kind of placate to the center a little bit. Outside of his media team, the consultants, the strategists, kind of get that Democratic vote, so people don't think you're too radical, so you can get those votes, and so we can defeat Donald Trump. How do you feel about that strategy where he's apologizing to Joe Biden and saying Joe Biden isn't corrupt in any way? Does that help him?
Not in the least bit. I think that it completely deflates, say, a lot of volunteers, a lot of his hardcore supporters who are ready to knock on every single door in their city. No, you're not supposed to say such nice excusatory things towards the people who want to squash him. They never say that he's their friend, ever. In fact, right, they say exactly the opposite. So his this kid glove treatment that he does have towards many of the worst Democrats, the so-called corporate Democrats, it's not helpful to his campaign. It's not helpful to anyone outside of that just means that he's willing to cuddle up to the people that have created the problems. Like, you could think back to Obama looking back on it, we should have protested about the fact that there were so many lobbyists on his campaign team, and he was talking with Citibank and Wells Fargo, etc. So ultimately, if Bernie backs down from his fire, that's where it's going to lead him. And we don't want that for Bernie or for any progressive leader. They have to stick up for something different. And, just on this outside strategy, let me give you the example I think is wonderful from south and Mexico. So I was born in Mexico, and so I'm still very into the Mexican politics, of course, as well as U.S. politics.
I thought you were Scottish, Barry. Not from Scotland?
Yeah,
all right.
Maybe so, back in the day. So. We have in Mexico President AMLO. Who he started in the institutional party, which ruled Mexico for a long time, and then he gradually moved out of that, and he was only able to triumph when he made his own party, the Morena party. And the people were so excited for this new possibility, this boldness, unapologetic. He has a lot of this very similar policy platforms, right, to Bernie. And his main saying is, for the good of everyone, the poor come first, which of course Bernie would agree with. But he could have never triumphed within the traditional parties. Yeah. So I wish that Bernie would actually do that, and people try to get him to do that. And the fact that he didn't actually scares me. I think I'm not sure. What is he going to do if he is not successful? And I hope he's successful. But we need to be able to plan for that contingency, and it needs to be, if our leader in the Democratic Party, who we want to take it over, right, that Bernie Sanders doesn't come through, we need an alternative. So that's why we need to build those alternatives.
I just want to say for the record, the Convo Couch stands by you with your decision. We push back because that's what we do here on the couch. But that is one of the biggest criticisms I have of Bernie Sanders is, why are you still sticking around with this party that hates you, that will stab you in the back? And what they've been doing lately has been disgusting through way of Elizabeth Warren. What was it, the Biden stuff? And I mean, everything that's coming out right now, the Daily Beast article, it's like, they're attacking him on these areas which are just dirty, disgusting smears.
Yeah, well, nothing he has done to when it comes to being kind to the centrists has benefited anyway. They were smearing him. If he did it, they smear him if he doesn't do anything. Yeah. So they're going to smear him anyway. So I don't think him, doing that is like a great strategy. As far as the inside and outside, I think we need both. I'm of the belief we need both. But more often than not, I see the people who go in there get co-opted instead of the other way around. Exactly. And so this is precisely why we need third parties and the Green Party and stuff, because you guys pushed the conversation way to the left, and that's something Kevin C's talked about.
And I also think too about the AOC stuff too as well. You're right on the mark on that. And one of the big areas of criticism, we talked about the funding with Venezuela, and even her attitude towards Venezuela when she's going to defer to the leader of the caucus, the caucus leadership. Caucus leadership, and to do that to give Max Blumenthal the cold shoulder, that was a problem for me.
He's still waiting for a statement.
He is still waiting for a statement from AOC, and Anya Prompro has even talked about, she's no leader. She deferred to the caucus leadership, where Tulsi Gabbard has stood on her own. I even heard at a rally that now AOC is on the fact that our foreign policy is our domestic policy. But let's stick on Venezuela, because you're a Green Party guy, and we love our Green Party guys because they know foreign policy, and we know you know foreign policy. Let's talk about Venezuela. What should be done there today? I know for a fact you probably don't think that Maduro is a dictator and we shouldn't be doing sanctions. What should we do immediately, Rodolfo?
Well, you just said it. We need to immediately lift those sanctions. Those sanctions are killing people. Medically speaking, that's we should not be killing so many people around the world. And that's exactly what we're doing in Venezuela. It's what we did by proxy next door in Bolivia and in so many other places. U.S. foreign policy has been a disaster for humanity for quite a few decades now, and I'll even say more than 200 years. So we need to change that. It's not acceptable. So I think in the case of Venezuela, we need to accept their sovereignty. We need to pull the CIA from trying to influence their internal processes. We need to respect what it is that the people have voted for. People may not know this. President Carter went down there and, because he's been very interested in election integrity. And he said that Venezuela had the best elections in the world. Yes, exactly. So, the popularly elected government of Venezuela should be respected. Yep. We wouldn't want a country to come in here and destroy our fundamental system. Usually a lot of people say that's our task.
But why is the Congress been so duped on this right now? So we have very few people. The reason why I'm a Tulsi person. How has the Congress been so duped on this? Is it the funding? What is it?
Well, a huge component of it is just the propaganda. Works at every level. The people in Congress are, in a way, they've been indoctrinated into the system since they were children, into believing that the United States has a duty and a right to lord over Latin America. That's part of it. And now once they, some of them were elevated to the upper echelons of education, and then they made it into the Congress. Well, they become stewards of the national history, the narrative, and that is a narrative that is all about oppressing and robbing other countries of their natural resources to enrich the very, very top of the economic food chain within the United States. That's just simply what they do. That's the task of the Congress, and I should say it's especially the task of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is the original party of the military-industrial complex. Truman is the one that dropped the bomb because he was being pushed by certain corporate leaders and even by some union leaders, right? Because they needed to keep the industry going. They needed to. These companies needed to demonstrate that the bomb was going to work for the United States. And then what did Eisenhower, a Republican, do? He criticized the Democratic establishment's creation of that military-industrial complex. So the only way to try to do away with this horrible, horrible spell is for us, the people, to use whatever means we can to end U.S. imperialism, certainly in Venezuela and around the world. So lift the sanctions and let's completely get out. Let's bring our troops home. Yeah, hands off Venezuela. That's right.
Great. Thank you so much.
So just along those lines, Donald Trump, effectively the Donald Trump administration murdered Qasem Soleimani in Iran, and now we have this situation in the Middle East that's been exacerbated. What is your opinion on that, and how we should from here on forward deal with it?
Well, and I'll mention again, Trump did make the call to assassinate that general. However, who gave him the tools to do so? It was the Democrats. They all voted for that war budget that just keeps getting larger and larger, and many of them, of course, are tied to those interests. That just keep getting more money from war. War is a business. It's the United States' probably biggest business.
Yeah.
So we need to thankfully, the Iranians have been trying to de-escalate the situation because, of course, they know that the capitalists in the U.S. will push Trump to keep up the force, and obviously they do not want anything to happen in their country.
Yeah.
And that Trump wouldn't bat an eye dropping a few nukes.
Yeah.
So we simply need to de-escalate that in the Congress. People like AOC and the others should be calling for an immediate removal of the troops around Iran to de-escalate the situation. They should be demanding that Nancy Pelosi stop taking money from Raytheon. And all the rest of them. Oftentimes when we like to talk about the leaders like Nancy Pelosi, but really all of them really take money from Raytheon except the corporate free ones like AOC and
but they have to hold the line. They have to realize that we put them there to fight the establishment, not join their.
Yeah, I was very disappointed. Like, I almost cried internally when I saw the squad arm in arm and the cover of Rolling Stone with Nancy Pelosi. That's just ridiculous.
No, I hated those pictures.
So, I mean, a lot of it is political, but at the same time, it's I've seen
she's just
the
I mean, exactly. Sorry.
And all that stuff. Yeah. So.
Well, I was going to say, we were talking about Iran. We were talking about, the whole system and using the whole tool, but the propaganda that comes with it. I don't know if you know this, but I'm a civil liberties guy. And, well, part of the reasons they were able to sell these wars to the American people is because they controlled the media. Censorship is alive and well. Civil liberties is one of the biggest problems because if we don't ever get a hold of this rhetoric, they're going to put forth their rhetoric and they're going to have their ways, the elites, and continue to profit off death and destruction. What can we do initially? What would be one of your biggest moves if you were elected to Congress to get back our civil liberties back on the right track?
So, of course, we need to immediately repeal the Patriot Act. We need to honor those rights that we have because they can be taken away. Of course, through the Patriot Act.
Yes.
So we absolutely need to do everything we can to, thankfully, a lot of people, education in our country does prioritize the First Amendment.
Yes.
So a lot of people on all sides of the political spectrum do defend that and really try to fight for freedom of speech. So that's a liberty that thankfully we're mostly okay. Of course, there's a lot of corporate influences on this, right? That people get their YouTube channels killed, and
you're talking to
suppressed
guys over here.
Yes. Yeah, so that needs to stop. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could do that. But so, say for example, the Fourth Amendment. Many people, I guess, who may be watching your show, are aware the Fourth Amendment has essentially been destroyed in the United States. We don't really have a right to privacy, and they can go into our personal effects whenever they really want to. Of course, they technically have to go through the FISA court, but they're lying to the FISA court, and no one's saying anything about it. It's Nancy Pelosi. In fact, is AOC saying anything about those? No. Yeah. So there's a.
In fact, they all voted to give him powers on the FISA court in his in his first year. Excuse my French, but that was another thing. You're going to oppose him, but you're going to give him more power through the FISA courts.
Exactly. So it's very unfortunate that the people that are currently in those positions of power are not standing up for these key rights, that liberties that we have to protect. A lot of people died for those liberties, and now our task is to even expand those liberties. Hopefully, we can do it peacefully. But this is not a joke. They do want to take away people's voices. They want to take away shows that showcase people like me, and they want to run our society as a bit more like I think like how the Nazis run theirs.
It's fascism. It's fascism. You're an anti-war candidate. You're going to be. We'll be demonetized because we won't be suitable for children or something stupid. Sorry, family.
And just I guess along those lines, since Pastor already jumped the gun, what is your stance on what you would do in regards to whistleblowers like Julian Assange?
I'm all about protecting whistleblowers, but I mean protecting really anyone. I want to improve and enhance human welfare. So if people see something that's wrong at their job, in their organization, they should be protected, especially if it's a governmental entity. So I fully have always supported, of course, people like Snowden, people like Assange. So we must stick up for them, because if we don't, then they, in the same way that they've gone after them, they'll go after us. Right. And it's like that poem, right? First they came for this group of people, then there was no one left to speak for me, and that is a real danger. And the only way that we have to oppose that is through each other, through getting out the word as much as we can, as often as we can, and just keeping going.
Well, you're a green. What are you going to do in this state as far as the laws to protect the greens, as far as the sales of marijuana and whatnot?
Yes.
I mean, because we have a little. It seems like the laws over here that a lot of these laws, when they put them into action, there's a lot of nuance to them. And it seems like the new recreational marijuana law just gave the rights and the powers for the city councils to bring in who they want. Therefore, it opened the door for corporate cannabis to come in and really dominate the market and put aside these small people. What are your thoughts on that? And what do you plan to do moving forward when it comes to marijuana laws in California?
So I am in favor of at the personal level, I am completely, of course, in favor of people should be able to do whatever it is that they would like to do with a plant, and certainly in the privacy of their own home. If communities can have debates about zoning and all of those issues. So I do think that the part of the reason why marijuana legalization has occurred, it's not just that attitudes of the people and the government have changed, it's that the corporations want to get in on that.
Exactly.
Yes. So the way to curb that is to continue. I mean, one of the things that many Greens certainly support, of political or Greens, is that local economies. So we don't want big monopolies. We are actually pretty opposed to them. They of course should be broken up. Even the biggest ones. People talk about. Bernie is talking about nationalizing some of the huge corporations. I don't know that he's talking about the marijuana corporations, but
that's our plan.
It's medicine. Yeah,
you should profit off it.
It could be about part of the Medicare for all system. Right?
Yeah, it could.
I think. I don't know if it is, but I think under Tulsi's plan it supposedly was. I'm not sure.
I think it is. Tulsi. I think she's decriminalizing all drugs.
Yeah, she's for decriminalizing all drugs.
So,
how do you feel about that, by the way? Decriminalizing all drugs.
I think that model has worked in other countries. In the sense
libertarian view. You.
In the sense that, oftentimes when the stigma or social fear around a substance can oftentimes lead people to engage in it, right? Because it's cool, or perceived as cool since it's rare, it's exotic. It turns out, I think there's been sociological studies in the Netherlands where now people in general, and especially the youth, are no longer really participating much. There's been a decrease in the extent to which people are participating in drugs. So that's very fascinating. So, for people that want to reduce drug use, legalization could actually work out. Yeah.
So let's get some domestic things in here, because we've been talking a lot about foreign policy. You advocate for a Green New Deal. What is the difference between the Green New Deal and what somebody like Bernie Sanders is pushing? And also, does that include a component for the homelessness crisis that's obviously very big in our state?
Great topic. I love talking about the Green New Deal, and I haven't read all of the details of Bernie's proposal, but let me tell you about the difference between the Green proposal and AOC's proposal, which was introduced in the House.
Yes.
I read it and I was alarmed by what I saw. People should go to congress.gov and check out her resolution, which many people have co-sponsored. Unfortunately, her resolution is not the boldest resolution that could be possible and that she should stand up for. So things like the nationalization of the fossil fuels industry. It has been a huge idea within the Green Party for sure. The idea that Chevron, for example, should not be allowed to operate as they currently do. Instead, the nation should have power over their factories, their refineries, so that we can plan it out so that it benefits the people. So that's been the tradition. I think, actually, thankfully, Bernie, I think, is sticking up for that. But again, I'm sad that AOC watered it down. She also watered down. I saw phrases in there about affordable transportation. No, let's just make public transportation free. Other countries have done it. Luxembourg has done it, and now U.S. cities are experimenting with it. It should simply be free. It is not so expensive, and it saves the people money that they can then use to spend on restaurants or whatever it is that they want to do.
Yeah.
You know, if we weren't being forced to have so many cars, and that was again a corporate plot.
Yes, it
You know,
was.
say to make Los Angeles so vast and empty of public transit. That was all planned. That was all planned out by corporations that wanted to make a dime from selling us cars. So no, we need a totally free public transit. That's how it should be. We also need. I was also bothered by another phrase that I saw in there: affordable housing. Affordable to who? Who's going to determine what's affordable? No, our government should take a clue from places like Venezuela and China as well. Venezuela has completed projects where, a project. The word project has a negative connotation in U.S. settings, but there's grand housing complexes in Venezuela now that are truly affordable. They're very, very cheap, and they could maybe even be free if they had decided to make it free. And we need those types of opportunities. This is not so complicated. Cement, wood. It's not so complicated to make a house or a living arrangement for a family. It's not so complicated. It should simply be done through a government decision. Unfortunately, our government has failed us on that, and that's why we have a homelessness crisis, and it's now turned into a public health crisis because of everything. The situation of living on the street of course creates a health hazard for the people living there and the entire population as well. So
it's amazing that you mentioned China and Venezuela, because those are two people, Maduro and Xi Jinping, that I often bring up because they fight poverty, but yet they're made to be enemies of the state. What about as far as in your district, homelessness? How can you address that head on right away?
Well, yes, homelessness is increasingly becoming a component of our district. So our district is Southeast Los Angeles County. So it's primarily it's some parts are very highly urban, and other parts are more suburban. And so we have not been hit as much with, say, what people call gentrification, which has really increased the housing availability. It has increased the housing availability, just not the affordability in other, say, areas of Los Angeles. So we don't have an extreme homelessness crisis, to say, in downtown LA, but we have always, of course, had homelessness, and so we need to solve it. But as it keeps increasing, because the rents keep increasing, it's a never-ending nightmare for families that cannot afford it, because the wages, of course, don't increase, and the cost of everything else is increasing as well. So we need to build truly affordable housing. The Congress. It would be an honor, a privilege to represent my community in the Congress. So what I would fight every fucking day for is that we need to build housing. This is not so difficult, as I just explained. There's so many open lots that are waiting, even a tiny house. People deserve the dignity of a place, a shelter. With thousands of years ago, when we lived in tribes, pretty much we gave everyone shelter. Everyone constructed shelter for their family. They were allowed to. Some say tribes even had a communal living arrangement, a house for everyone in the tribe. It's just that really only over the last 200 years have we come up with this concept of rent and being the rent being unaffordable. Like, that's a new concept in human history, and we need to abolish that concept. We need to house the people.
Speaking of abolish, a lot of people say abolish ICE, and I'm with that, but how do you feel about the term abolish the CIA?
I am all for it. I was using it
Somebody's got to walk him to his car now, okay? Make sure he's safe. He just said that on live streaming.
Yes, the perils of being a
Well,
candidate. Yes,
but it's
there
like,
are
you
some
know.
true perils. I think that the CIA has been running amok all over the world to this day, to this minute. They've destabilized so many other countries. That has harmed the people in those countries. That has harmed us. It harms us. We can talk about morality, and harms us. This is not good for our country to have this on our shoulders, this history, and but we have to deal with it. But it affects us. Think about Honduras, right? So what happened there during the Obama administration? The CIA and U.S. corporations wanted a change, wanted a destabilization in Honduras. And so what happened? Well, they got what they wanted, but then, of course, that creates chaos, and the people had to flee. And so then we have this crisis at the border, and then the children in the cages, and
But nobody ever talks about that.
nobody ever talks.
Are you saying that that's the reason for we have a migration problem? Is because we go cause a problem over there with their government, and then they show up on our doorstep because we've turned their house into a hellhole? Is that what you're saying?
How dare you?
You
say
know,
that?
yeah, the United States essentially runs the world, has been running the world, and it's been running the world into a ditch. Yes, I actually, in a way, I am in the United States because my family was affected by NAFTA. So U.S. corporations and the corporate government made it so that the Mexican economy and many middle-class people were hurting. They a lot of them say who had small businesses, they crashed in the mid-90s. And then that created one wave of migration, of which I was a part of. I was a part of that wave of migration. And now we have a new wave of migration caused by, all the arms that we arm some people with, and that's just unacceptable. We just need that. All that needs to stop. All that needs to stop, and the way to do it is to use every means possible, including the electoral system, to get out these ideas. And hopefully, thankfully, there could be an election.
Yeah, well, I think that Donald Trump's idea to stop the migration is to arm the troops, the government, even more that we put into place, and now keep them inside the house, their country, and not let them migrate. That's his new plan to slow down migration. Speaking of Donald Trump, when you talked about the NAFTA thing, how do you feel just off the cuff when it comes to these trade deals that's going on? Because we kind of discussed it before, where I thought they should have signed the deal just because they put such a strain on our agriculture and our small farmers in America. However, a lot of people wanted to see more workers' rights and climate change
like
involved
burning,
in the bills and stuff like that. But from being where we started from in this situation with Donald Trump, what were your initial thoughts about people who signed off on this and whatnot?
I opposed it for the standard reasons that, let's say Bernie opposed it and was very articulate in that debate with Liz Warren. So we should no longer accept these incremental tweaks to the system. We need grand changes, and really that agreement should have addressed immigration, and why is it that we can have free trade for corporations, essentially, but we can't have free movement of people? These are key things, and especially Bernie again said during his answer that climate change is coming. Climate change is also going to lead to waves of movements of people, and we're not going to be able to exactly predict which direction. We need free movement of people, not just corporations.
I know we got to get going here, but
Elizabeth
it's
Warren?
your opinion quickly on Elizabeth Warren, and then I have one last thing I want to say.
I think she's the worst. I think that
Did I tell you that I love you? Okay. All right.
She has clearly been. If people didn't see, she was having meetings with the very top billionaires in this country that are more on the Democratic side. That was happening before she announced. It's been very clear that she would abandon her so-called progressivism, which has never even been that strong.
Exactly.
She simply like say on the military, she essentially wants to have a green military instead of that's her solution to climate. It's ridiculous. So she's a fake, she's a phony, she always has been. Hopefully she tanks. She needs to go the fuck away.
Yeah. And just because I'm like, I want to ask this because it's important. People are probably saying, God, what a great candidate. I wish he would run as a Democrat. Will you please run as a Democrat? Like, can you, like, what is your answer to that? Like, because I feel like if you ran as a Democrat, it's so stupid. But the system we're in, you put a D next to your name, they're going to be like, oh, he's more progressive than AOC. The Democratic Socialists would, go to you, and you would have all these movements, all these Rose Twitter people being like, oh, yeah, this is a great guy. But because you have the label of green, it kind of offsets that. What do you say to that?
There, unfortunately, stereotyping is strong, and people have strong social identities. Unfortunately, we have myself. I used to be a very strong Democrat, very, very strong, because I thought that the Democrats were for the people, especially for my people, for Latinos. That's false.
Not the case.
Not the case. So my, last time in the election, I got I think 27,000 votes. So it's a very slow turnout district. So right now, I'm out there every day. People can actually watch me at city councils often. If people, I even put them on my YouTubes, because I'm getting out all of these ideas and more. Because again, my priority is to make sure that the people learn about the topic and are able to then defend. My biggest hope is that some other people can start doing what I'm doing, then become candidates for other things. That would be great, because that's what we need. It needs to be a team building effort. So last time I was lucky in that only one. I was only the only one on the ballot against my opponent. This time there are more people, but thankfully, because I am far more known in the district, I know that a good number of people write to me and they say, thank you for running and thank you for everything that you're saying about the Democratic Party. So hopefully, every little bit helps. If people can help with any, amounts, but they can contact me if they like to help out, because this is really important to overcome the system. So. I chose green. Right now I'm green. I'm on the green on the ballot, and people know what that means now in Congressional District 40. So I'm excited for that.
I hope your stock continues to ride. Keith M., Super Chat contributor, says, didn't Bernie, it's disappointed that Bernie didn't even mention Julian Assange. But since you're one of Johnny's favorite candidates, I'm going to give him the last question and get you out of here. And after, you can tell us where we can find you online, get you a few bucks, and get you over to Hum. Johnny, take it away, last question. Go ahead.
All right. Yes. Rodolfo, you're an amazing candidate. I really want to hear your thoughts on the reasons behind why the U.S. runs such an imperial regime throughout this world.
Well, historically speaking, it's because we inherited the mantle of the British Empire, the white man's burden, this toxic idea that Europe and its people were destined to lord and rule over the rest of the world. Because the British Empire suffered considerably after the World Wars, we inherited that, and now the British and the various other countries of Europe want the U.S. to continue their legacy of imperialism, their legacy of economics, slavery. Even though we may not have physical slavery anymore, but the Western world wants the rest of the global South, as they call it, to be indebted, to continuously be paying up, to be giving us their precious rare earth metals. That's the new one, the new resource that the U.S. imperialists and the rest of the Western imperialists are after. So, empires have a way of continuously growing, and thankfully they all fall. And my hope is that ours will fall as well, because that's what the humanity needs.
Yeah.
Do you think, apart from the resources, do you think it's the economic system plays a role also?
Yeah, so the economic system of that took root in the Western world, it didn't have to turn out this way, but it did, of this capitalism, so where the Western capitalists, the biggest capitalists, those that sit around and collect money and figure out how to get more of it, so that's the economic system that Great Britain chose and implemented, pushed, coerced other countries into getting. These days, most people are calling it neoliberalism, but the idea is the same. Some people have all the power, and they get even more power through more money, more products that they force the rest of us to buy. But we all know that capitalism eats itself, and that's what it's doing right now. So it's our task to prepare ourselves for something different.
Monetary system,
awesome.
Austerity.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Everyone
we can find you.
Yes, tell
I'm
us.
so
Tell
sorry.
us.
We'll give you a few bucks right there. Speaking of that monetary system.
So people can go to Barragan, BARRAGAN, number 4, congress.com, and there's a link up there if people can contribute, and if people are in the area, let me know. We're out there every day.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's really nice hearing actual hardcore leftist perspective. And it's funny because a lot of people consider themselves Democratic Socialists running in the Democratic Party. And I still feel like they kind of don't address foreign policy enough.
Nope.
So it was nice hearing you pretty much hit everything on that. I mean, there's nothing I disagree with you on. So that's interesting. It's rare for me.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being here and giving your opinion. I know as a Green you have a tough challenge, but your ideas are worthy of getting out there. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
And from the Progressive Libertarian, Pasta Jardula.
Oxymoron, Fiorella.
Jonny Tsu on the ones and
Everyone
twos.
donate. I donated when I was filming his interview with Tina. Fucking
District 34, there's a podcast if you want to hear it.
2020.
Yes.
That's what I donated.
Rodolfo, we love you. Thank
you
you
got
so much for
2020
coming out.
vision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You were awesome. Convo out, everybody.